What's up, everybody? Dev Del Molino back here today, fresh out of the gas station, full tank of gas, and so you know what that means. I'm ready to ride around sunny Seattle and talk to myself in my own vehicle about albums I like and don't like, and then I'm going to post it to YouTube and I'm going to share it with you guys. Now, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get off into another multi-review in which, I'll take some albums that I've heard in the last 2 or 3 months and, just shoot you guys some brief thoughts about what I think about them. Now, the first album I'm going to talk about today is the new Wale album, Shine. I'm going to be straightforward in telling you guys that I do not think this album is good. It's not good at all. In fact, I almost hate it. Now, the worst thing for me, as someone who considers themselves to be a Wale fan, is that this album follows up on a continuous trend of Wale albums that become more corny and less interesting and appealing to listen to than the previous. I think the only album that he's released that has managed to kind of set itself aside from this trend would be his most recent, the album About Nothing. I think the biggest reason for that is just that in its concept, it's a really interesting thing to do by having himself and Jerry Seinfeld kind of go in on the concept of this album together. Even if you think this album is flawed, and it is, just the concept alone I think is interesting and kind of invites listeners back into Wale music, whereas this album does not. Wale has lost sight of what made people interested in his music in the first place. Lyrically, he has always been someone who is witty and talented and kind of has this poetic style that, for me, was something I definitely found myself enamored with throughout his entire career. But in listening to this album, it really feels like Wale has ditched his more thoughtful creative process for making music for one that is much more superficial in many different ways. A lot of the instrumentals, most notably My Love, which is the Major Lazer produced track, I think Diplo also produced that track, totally missed the mark on either reaching the audience or completing what he was attempting to do. So in the case of My Love, Wale is going for something that represents his Nigerian heritage and kind of represents this Afrobeat style. But what we come out with is a song that just sounds like the 10th millionth copycat of One Dance in this Caribbean style that is just rampant through mainstream music right now. Fashion Week featuring G-Eazy is supposed to be this club banger. It's not. Overall, it's pretty underwhelming. Fine Girl is just the worst song, and it's so sad because it's really the song that represents that Afrobeat style the most, and it's just ruined by this just the worst hook I've ever heard Wale write or sing or rap in my entire life. Now, my favorite and funniest moment on this album is the song DNA, and I want to take a moment to juxtapose Wale's song DNA with Kendrick Lamar's song DNA off the new Damn album. Now, K-Dot's song DNA is this kind of conceptual banger centralized around the theme that the negative things that you see going on in the hood: drugs, sex, murder, a poisonous lust for money and power. These are all things that Kendrick have found to be ubiquitous within the culture and the environment that he grew up in. Thus, these things, by way of his own family and his friends, have sort of figuratively been written into his DNA, his moral code. Now, Wale's track, DNA. DNA is supposed to be an acronym in which Wale loosely uses it to represent the term good dick in advice. Good dick in advice. I just can't think of a better example to show to you guys how far Wale has kind of fallen below his contemporaries. And it's just sad because he originally came up amongst the likes of, a young Drake, a young Kid Cudi, a young J. Cole, very important rappers in today's generation. And again, it just goes to show that, especially with this new album, his days of relevancy are nearing their end. The saddest part of it all is that this album, honestly, is not worth listening to. Like, not worth checking out the whole thing. I wouldn't have listened to this if I didn't review music. Now, I will say that the saving grace of this album is another one of the singles, Fish and Grits, featuring Travis Scott. I say this largely in part to Travis Scott's performance on the record, but I do also think that his chemistry with Wale on this track is really great. This instrumental is so spacious, it's so nocturnal, and it's honestly just pitch black. And when you hear Travis's vocals on this record, they just sound like bright, pink streaks all across the instrumental. And these vocals just pop right off the wax, and it's fire. It's one of Travis's best attributes. Wale goes in with what he calls the rodeo flow, kind of giving an homage to Travis, and their chemistry together fits really well. They're giving airtight verses, they're going back and forth, trading bars, they're feeding off of each other's flows, and overall this just comes together as a very well-rounded track, a great hook, great instrumental, the best song on this album, one of my favorite songs I've heard in a good while. Now the next album I want to talk about is the newest Freddie Gibbs album that came out quite a while back, You Only Live Twice. Now this album has a ton of context surrounding its material and just kind of the essence behind the record. So to surmise that briefly, I will say this. Freddie Gibbs just got home not too long ago, definitely not too long before this album dropped, doing a bid for a crime he did not commit. He was locked up in Austria for what seemed to be like 3 or 4 or 5 months in the middle of this tour that he was on for what was an alleged rape case that was then thrown out, and he was let go and sent back to the United States. It's pretty sad that Gangsta Gibbs had to be, down for this long for obviously what was a very unfair situation, but he comes out with prison with some very triumphant and determined material to present to the world. And for me, the personal growth that Freddie Gibbs portrays for the listeners is vivid and it's intriguing. He really does dig deep into those feelings and those experiences and comes out with some pretty gratifying material when it's all said and done. And these emotional pictures that Freddie paints for us are detailed and they're convincing. And it adds a lot to the story and, like I said, the context of this album altogether. Some of my favorite tracks on this album, I love how 20 Karat Jesus starts this album off. That beat switch is fire. And at the end of the second half of this song, we get a skit from none other than the Black Jesus, the Adult Swim Black Jesus. Alexis is another dope record, crazy beat on it. I think that's the one that's produced by Bad Bad Not Good and Kate Trinata. Overall, I like this album a lot, and I have a lot of really good things to say about it. But I will say this, it's definitely not perfect, and I will never love this album the way I love that Pinata album that he did with Madlib. Which is why the next thing that I absolutely have to hear from Freddie Gibbs is that new Bandana project that is supposed to follow up the Pinata project that him and Madlib did together. So in a way, yeah, this album will hold me over for a little bit, but man, there is just nothing like that collision of those two artists, and I just gotta have more, at least one more album, please. Now, the last thing that we're gonna talk about today, I'm saving the best for last, because can y'all believe that there is a TWayne and Lil Wayne 2009 goddamn motherfucking album out? Now, I had to park my goddamn car for this shit because I lost my goddamn mind when I saw this shit. The crazy thing about this album, and again, we'll provide some context for you, this is 2009. This is fresh off of Carter 3 and No Ceilings Lil Wayne. Yeah, that may have been peak leaned out of his mind Lil Wayne, but... And TWayne was kind of the same way at this time too. If you can take yourself back and remember that time, TWayne was featured on everything. They had Get Money together, and that was a huge record. They also had the track about, how they could put you in a mansion and then fly you to Wisconsin, and that was a crazy record. And again, I have to be fair and admit my personal bias as always, and just say that, when I saw that TWayne had kind of reached into the vault and unlocked this album that they were working on in 2009, 13-year-old Dev nostalgia was rampant within me. Bro, I'm not kidding you. Man, this album had me looking in the back of my closet for my Supras and my skinny jeans. And bro, I just wasn't prepared for this shit. I get it. I really am being kind of a fanboy right now, but it really was a treat for me to get this and kind of go back into that time and think about how people and hip-hop fans would have perceived this and received this album if it came out at that time. And I just think it's so dope that TWayne decided to unlock it and just toss it out there and give us that time relapse, because so many people were awaiting this project at the time. Now, my favorite tracks off of this, Damn, 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 hot. Waste of a Wasp, hot. Heavy Chevy, hot. And yeah, that's what I got for that album. That's what I got for these 3 albums. Let me know what you think of it all. Let me know, did you think Wale's album was trash? Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think I'm a little overly obsessive about this TWayne mixtape, album, whatever? I am. Now, for my Gangsta Gibbs fans out there, what do you think of this album versus the Shadow of a Doubt album? Because they kind of have similar sounds. Now, if you guys want to interact with me on the internet, you can definitely do that on my YouTube page, at which you can subscribe, you can comment, you can smash that MF like, you can tweet me on the Twitter at Dev Del Molino. You can follow me on Instagram at 40ounces.of.dev. You can follow me on my Tumblr, all that other good stuff. Just holla at me when you can. Thanks again so much for the support. You guys are so great for watching these videos. I'll have more stuff soon. We got a Lil Yachty album coming out that I'm definitely going to review, and you guys will just have to catch me then, okay? Dev Del Molino, out.